Hi there, welcome to the Upcycle Design Lab. If this is your first time here, my name's Cindy and I craft using recycled and repurposed materials to give you ideas on ways to make and create more economically and ecologically. And about a year ago, I posted a video on how to make 3 different bead styles from aluminum cans. I made these 3 different rolled shapes. And if you're interested in that tutorial, I will link to that in the description box. But if you saw last week's video, you know I was working on some jewelry, and you might have seen this memory bracelet that I made. And in this bracelet, I used all of the rolled beads that I made previously and a new little puffy bead that I'm calling a pillow bead. And you can make it in either a bead shape or, as I did in these earrings, as more of a charm shape. So today I'm going to be going through the tutorial for making those beads, and we're going to start with some little circle discs cut out of the aluminum can. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that you know how to cut down and flatten your cans into sheets that look like this. If you need more information on how to do that, there will be a lot of resources in the description box, but we're just going to start with a single flattened aluminum sheet. You can cut the circles by hand or on a Cricut cutting machine. I'm just using a 9-piece punch and die set because it's very fast to cut the holes that way. But like I said, you can cut them by hand or on a Cricut cutting machine. And I'm going to be using the 3/4 inch punch, which is the biggest hole available. I'm working on a hollow door, so I just have a little bit of extra wood to brace my piece here. And then I'm just going to slide the aluminum sheet in, center it where I want it. I'm going to cut it with the print side up because, as you'll see once we cut it, it does have a little bit of an edge, but we are going to work that down with the next process, so you don't have to really worry if you have a little bit of a rough edge left on your circle. So I'm just going to place my cutting die in the hole here. And I have a rubber mallet. I honestly do not know what the differences are between these two ends, but I found that the black end, for whatever reason, seems to work better. And the best way to do this is if you can just make it punch with 1 strike of the hammer. Sometimes it takes 2, but you want to be pretty determined as you're using this tool to make sure you cut the hole more evenly and smoothly. So maybe you can see this. There's a tiny bit of a little turned up edge here, and as I mentioned, we are going to work that down so you can work with pieces that have imperfect cuts. So I'm just going to continue cutting a few more pieces and then we'll go to the next step. For this next step, I'm going to be using a dapping and doming block set, and they come in all different sizes. My set has 25 pieces, including the block piece. And I'm going to be using the size 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10. If you're not familiar with some of the tools that I'm using, I will link to them in the description as well. If you're interested in finding one or purchasing one, there'll be a link for that in the description as well. So this doming block doesn't have any markings on it as far as sizes, but you can tell by looking at it the larger to smaller sizes. And I'm actually going to be starting with the next to the largest size. So this is the biggest circle. I actually don't need to go quite that big, and I'm going to start with the next size down. And I'm going to be using my largest dapping tool that I selected, so the number 20. And if you're working with very heavy materials, I've also done some tin can. I've also worked with tin cans and this dapping block, and you might need a hammer to tap the shape. But for the aluminum, you can do it by hand. So I'm just going to place my first piece in there, and I want the aluminum side out. So I'm placing it in there with the print side up. And I just want to work really slowly to reshape the aluminum piece to fit into this recess. You don't want to push right down in the middle because it'll just make the piece kind of crinkle up. So you can kind of start on the edges and just kind of press gently, and you'll feel the piece starting to shape. You can see that I've already kind of gotten a bit of a crinkle in there, so I want to kind of work on that spot and push that out. But you'll feel the aluminum start to shape into the cup of the dapping block. And once you've kind of got it a little bit curved, you can kind of swirl the dapping tool around just to make sure that you've got this aluminum piece fitting nicely in the cavity of the dapping block. So you can see that it's starting to get a little bit of a curve, and if you want to, you can go back and try to kind of knock this piece down a little bit more. You can see I'm just using kind of a swirling motion, and that is the first step. So normally I would do all of these in this particular spot and then move to the next tool, but I'm just going to carry on to the next size hole. So I don't need this dapping tool anymore. I'm going to go to my next size down, which is the 17, and I'm going to find the next smallest hole, which is this guy, and I'm just going to repeat the process. I want to work slowly and carefully so I'm not crushing the piece, and just fit it into the cavity. And once I've finished shaping it in this divot, I will go to the next size down and my next tool size down, which is the 15, and I'll work down 2 more sizes in the same fashion. So here's a closer look at the 5 different stages. And this dapping block obviously has smaller dapping tools and smaller dimples to use, but this is the smallest I've had the nerve to go, because you can easily break this aluminum. It's very thin material, and if you work too fast you can easily tear the material. Now a tear like this we can repair, but you do want to be cautious to work slowly and try not to tear the material. So I'm going to go ahead and finish shaping these pieces and be back for the next step. If you decide to do this, be aware that it is a little bit of a workout and it does take some patience. So as I mentioned, the pieces are very easy to crack, and I cracked a couple of them. So we're going to go ahead and repair those right now. And to make the repair, I'm just going to use my metal tape. If you've seen some of my other aluminum can projects, you know that I love this tape. It's actually found in hardware stores where the duct and air conditioning, dryer vents, all that kind of stuff is located. And so I just have a little piece of it right now. It's really easy to use because it's got some paper backing. So I just want to cut a tiny little piece to put inside my dome here to kind of shore up that crack in it. So you don't need very much. And when you're ready to use it, you can just peel back the tape and remove the paper backing. And then I just want to put the tape on the inside here and press it into place. And I like to use my embossing tool to make sure that it's kind of burnished onto the whole area. As I mentioned, you can use these to make beads or little charms. So I'm going to make 2 beads and 1 charm. And the only difference in this step is that I'm going to punch some holes in the centers. But for the charm, I only want to punch a hole in 1 piece and not both pieces. And you just want to do this nice and gently. You want to make sure you have a nice sharp stylus or some other tool that you use for punching a small hole. And again, just work gently. Try to get it as close to the center as possible. So I've got my pieces paired up because I need 2 for each one. So this will be my little charm piece and these will be my beads. I'm going to start with the charm, and for this piece I'm just using a small eyelet. There's probably some other jewelry finding that you could use, or you could use a small piece of wire, whatever you want to use to make a little loop in the top of the charm piece. So I'm just going to use some E6000 glue to attach this to the inside of my aluminum piece. You do want to make sure that whatever you're using isn't too long for the piece to fit together, and this works just fine. So I'm just going to use a little bit of E6000 glue. You could use hot glue as well to secure this in place. So I'm going to set that aside for a little bit and let that glue set up. So I'm ready to put the beads together, and I just need another small piece of aluminum tape, and I cut it about 1/8 of an inch wide. You can measure and draw a line on the back of the tape if you want to be super accurate, but I just kind of eyeball it. These beads are a little bit imperfect anyway, so I don't think you have to worry too much about the tape. You don't want it too wide so that it covers the whole all of the aluminum, but you also need to make sure that it's wide enough to catch the edges. So I'm just going to take the 2 pieces and hold them really gently. And then I'm just going to carefully wrap the tape around the 2 pieces, making sure that I'm making contact with both pieces. They don't have to touch completely. You'll see that the edges are really rough here. They don't match up perfectly, but you do want to make sure that you're catching all the edges in the tape. And you want to overlap just a little bit, and you can cut off the excess. And I like to just gently press the tape toward each side. And then I'm going to use my embossing tool just to try to fold the tape down a little bit closer on to the metal. And I do that on the opposite side as well, just making sure that the tape is making contact all around all the edges. And then when I've gotten the tape pretty well attached to both sides and all the way around, I'm going to take the edge of my embossing tool and just gently kind of burnish the edge down to smooth it out. So you can see the tape isn't perfectly even, and you can work on it to get, if there are spots that are still a little bit not to your liking and you want to smooth out the tape a little bit more. Because this is metal tape, it is very kind of moldable, and it will take the shape of whatever you're sticking it to very easily. It doesn't try to hold its own shape like some other tapes do. And I'll assemble the charm exactly the same way. You could stop right there if you wanted to, but I always think it's a good idea to add a sealer coat. And when I'm working on beads, for some reason, I just started using this high gloss Mod Podge instead of regular Mod Podge. And I like it because it's a little thicker, and so I feel like it just adds a little bit extra sealant and helps to hold the beads together. So that's how you make the aluminum can pillow beads and charms, but you don't have to leave them just silver. If you want to add some color, you can use some alcohol inks and a small container. I've got some beads in here that have been sealed and they've dried already, and you do want to seal them before you add the alcohol ink, just because the alcohol ink can tend to make the tape fail and then your bead might come apart. So you want to seal them before and after the alcohol ink. But you can add some pretty colors by just adding a few drops to a container and then shaking it around. If you want to, you can add a lid for a little bit more vigorous shaking. If you need to, you can add some more ink. And then you just want to give those a few minutes to dry and put another sealing coat on. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find some more upcycled jewelry ideas in the links below. Be sure to check the description for all the additional resources. Click the like button to help promote my channel, and hit that subscribe button to join my YouTube community. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.